Conversation. My name is Zsófia, and today we are continuing our LinkedIn Live special session to have a sneak peek about our conference and the Pre-Conference Masterclass happening in Budapest the 18th, the 19th, and the 20th of September. And I'm so glad that you all joined us. Today we are diving into a topic that sits at heart of how we work, adapt, and thrive. If companies change, why shouldn't organizational design do so? So it's a question that challenges the way many of us think about change in business, and one that my guest is deeply explored. So now I would like to introduce Elvira to you. Joining me as a guest. Hello, Elvira. Elvira is an internationally renowned org designer and work revolutionist, a mentor and coach, and the author of the book, which is here with me, the Go Beyond Pocket Mentor. Maybe you see it well. So Elvira has spent decades helping organizations to transform from inside out, moving away from rigid machine-like way of working to think of organizations like living organisms and evolving systems. And her approach is practical, hopeful, so solution-focused and deeply human. So Elvira, let's start from the very beginning. Today we are going to explore this topic, how companies and organizational change and why shouldn't organization design. Can you elaborate on that? Because previously when we were chatting, that was the topic that came out that we would explore.
Yes, and thank you very much, Zsófia, for the very nice invitation and for the opportunity I can talk about my absolute favorite topic, actually. How companies change. I was thinking before this session how deep we should go into this and how much do we actually have to explain this, because all of us are living it day by day in our daily life and noticing how fast things are changing, how often we have to reprioritize. I mean, if I think back to the beginning of my professional career, a little bit more than 20 years ago, I remember at my first client, we used a similar approach than with what we use today, looking into different horizons in the strategic planning process. And I remember asking the owner of this vending machine company, how does he imagine his company in 15 years' time? And it was a tricky question for him, but actually, and this was 20 years ago, he could have a pretty good sense of how life is going to be in 15 years' time and how he would like to have his company growing by that time and succeeding. And we came back from that horizon, and then we had a look at 10 years, and then we actually created a strategy for 5 years. And today, if you would ask somebody, how do you imagine your life or your company in 15 years' time? I think it would be a blunder, yeah? I mean, we can't even imagine how life is going to be in 15 years' time, so let alone how companies and business is going to happen. So all in all, what we can see is that we definitely live in a world where all the future is kind of predicted it and told us that change is going to speed up with an exponential speed, yeah? And we thought COVID was a big change, and after COVID, we go back to the good old solid days. And of course, that's not what's happening. So even after COVID, I had some clients, I remember, that thinking up to 5 years and 3 years, but still kind of a graspable idea. Yeah, you could still imagine what will be in 5 years' time. Today, seriously, with AI arriving into companies, and not just in a ChatGPT form, but in all sorts of forms, who can tell how life is going to be in 5 years' time? Yeah? And what we see is that companies are fairly good, actually, to adapt to this faster and faster changing environment. And of course, how we adapt is we have to constantly have our antennas, feelers out, and sense the market, sense the possibilities, and rethink continuously what we are doing and how we are doing. And now talking about that, I guess we don't have to over-explain, yeah? So it's speeding up, we're all living in it, so there's not much to explain about this. But then the question comes, okay, but how do we create change or transformation in organizations? And is it still helpful to use our good old tried and tested methodologies where we spend a fair amount of time diagnosing what the problem might be, a fair amount of time planning the new, often focusing way too much on the company's structure? That's usually most often the question we get as org designers. And when will be the new structure ready? Yeah. And then we try to implement it. And what I see in my practice is that still a lot of companies approach change and transformation this way, which means that from the moment you start a process till you sort of implement what you've planned takes, okay, if we are very fast, maybe a year. If we are not that fast, so larger corporations, 2-3 years. 2-3 years. So designing a change now that will be fully implemented in 2-3 years, how many things are going to change on the road? Yeah. So how we did this is definitely not helpful anymore. And in a way, us consultants, our profession is often responsible for this, that without tried and tested methodologies, we actually hold back companies from constantly changing.
So if I think a little bit deeper about what you are saying, it rings me the bell, the swallow metaphor. My question is, you are usually talking that, and especially in your book, you are highlighting that it doesn't depend on the role, on the change maker role, but anyone could lead the change, and tension is a good sign where change should happen. So how we approach this and how you as a consultant are doing this or teaching this in an organization, because it seems that it's a mindset what you are bringing in.
It is, and I think it's important to start with us, the org design professionals, that to realize that how we used to do things is slowing down things. So actually, when we are there in the organization, our job is not just to help the organization not to solve its problems, but to elevate itself to its next level. But it's also our job to leave there this knowledge how to do this, so organizations don't become dependent on us. Because we are few, it takes a long time to actually get an external consultant on board. So that also slows down the process. Part of it, I mean, I worked internally as well, so I know the ins and outs of this. First of all, you have to have someone, and these are the people whom I call the work evolutionists, someone who notices that we could do something differently. But then these people have to speak up, they have to find the right stakeholders, convince them to start changing something. That takes months or sometimes also years. And then you have the beautiful procurement processes and purchase order issuings and stuff like that, which are all very important processes, but hear it again, that these are all slowing down the whole process when change is needed fast. So by the time people feel the tension in the organization that they have to do something differently, they should be acting on it and not spending their energy and effort getting somebody on board from the outside. And with this, I'm not saying that the external consultants are not needed, but with this, what I'm trying to say is that this kind of knowledge of how to address these tensions, how to work with them, how to turn our focus from trying to solve the problems into trying to evolve the organization, this kind of knowledge should be a competency in every organization. And who should have it? Yeah, that's a good question. And that's where you were tapping very nicely into that. It's not something that should be connected to job descriptions. So I don't like to say that, oh, it should be HR's role, or this should be the CEO's role, or they should be change agents in the organization, and this should be their role. Because, in fact, if you look into how this happens in nature also, it's those people's role who sense the tension, yeah? If you sense an emergency, you will shout and tell your friends and colleagues whether you're a bird or an animal or a human. So we have this kind of instinct behavior, but then we kind of, from the lot of hypotheses that we think how an organization should work, we often press down these instinctive behavior. And that's what I'm talking a lot about in my book, how we should and could empower the people, whomever they are in the organization, to have basic, simple tools with what they can start working in their control circles, and then let that grow into a bigger thing if it's needed to grow into a bigger thing. But it's not some kind of secret knowledge that us, only the external consultants, should hold on to. And to add to this, from the organizational design professionals' point of view, it would help our work, our job as well, if we have on-site people who are understanding what we are doing, where are we coming from with our questions. So it also helps actually the external consultants to get on-site when they are needed, because of course there are situations when you internally can't solve it, not because you don't have the knowledge necessarily, but because of the dynamics. If it's an external person facilitating the process, it moves faster. So I've dedicated my last 6 years to this topic, how to translate this knowledge into really very simple tools that we can hand over to people in organizations, regardless of their job descriptions. People who have this sense, who can see that, oh, now we should do something differently, and how they can start doing things differently. Which also means that by empowering people in organizations, we can create, again, more of a naturalistic way of change, because we're not waiting until we collect a lot of issues, a lot of problems, and then we design a giant transformation where it takes almost everybody's role to change, a job to change. But instead of that, we can create small, steady steps towards a direction that people agree. Mm. So that's what the book is about, actually, to give tools and give via stories a little bit of inspiration, how we can hand over this knowledge. And it's not necessarily via trainings, but also by involving people from the organization. So when we are coming in as externals, working together with some people from the organization, so they also learn how we are thinking about the process, how we are putting these tools together into kind of a nice necklace, the pearls, how they come together. And the more they have this experience, the more we are co-creating, the more likely they're going to be able to notice next time earlier when they have to change something, and they will have also the tools how to tackle them and how to start doing something differently.
Mm. And if you should list 3 tools which lead to these micro interventions, where to start? What are the most essentials that can be replicable?
I think I'm going to list a few things that are giving a little peek into the solution-focused approach, which is, of course, not something I have invented. It's a tried and tested approach coming from family therapy. It's widely used in coaching and team coaching. What I've been doing in the last 15 years is using it in organization development and design. So it's been tried and tested with lots of my clients and colleagues so that I can confidently say that it works. We usually say starting with the end in mind, but I would say there is a step before that. So what I would say the smallest micro tool is actually whenever we sense a tension or a problem in the organization, is to look back a little bit into the history. The history of that unit, the history of that topic, if it's the whole organization's issue, then the history of the organization, and see how the organization evolved. Bring that into our mind, or how the unit evolved, or how that topic evolved, yeah? And just list together with the people whom you are working together with, or you are part of that team maybe, what were the main milestones from the beginning? What were the biggest learnings? What were the things that the organization or the team has collected as resources throughout the history of it? Because way too often what happens is that when we see the tension, we sense the tension, we focus all our attention to that problem. And we try to solve that problem. But often, attention is just a sign that we are ready to move to the next level in our evolution. And by looking back, it kind of opens our focus, opens our perspective, and suddenly we see that this tension is, it's connected to this evolution, and now we should be ready to make a move forward. That would be tool number one. Tool number two, start with the end in mind. So often in organization development, you hear this kind of guidance to trust the process. And I always wonder, how can you trust the process if the people did not agree at the beginning where they are going? So I used to work in a problem-focused way also in the beginning of my career, because I did not know anything else. And way too often we identify the problem, and then we say we're going to design a process where we are going away from that problem. Yeah, but that away can be 130,000 different directions. And what I think is super important, that before we embark into any change, or before we change anything in what we do or how we do, to talk about it. How would it look like when it's on the next level, when it's one better, when we evolved to the next stage? And often these conversations already either don't contain the problem anymore normally, yeah. But with this kind of approach, we're not just finding the solution for the problem, but we're finding a lot more aspects of where should we be heading. So talking about this preferred future, we actually make a choice out of the 130,000 possible future directions. We make sure that us, the people who are involved into this process, we agree on the direction where we are heading to. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. I mean, I love using, for example, my Star Wars Lego set, which I inherited from my son, or you can ask people to create podcasts from the future. So this can be a creative process. But the whole idea is that we imagine that next level and next step and agree on that. And probably the third little tool I would say is, you would say, oh, it's a simple agile tool, but of course it's coming from the solution focused background, the stop, start, continue. Mm-hmm. So once we know where we are heading and we agreed on that, then we just have to simply ask, what are the practices, what are the things that we are doing today we should continue doing because it will take us there? What are the things we should stop because we've been doing them, but maybe we don't need to do them anymore? And what are the things that we should start experimenting with? Because this new level means a new way of working, a new way of collaborating maybe with each other. And it's a very simple thing, coming also from the solution-focused approach. Steve DeShazer said, do more of what is working and stop doing what's not working, yeah, and start experimenting with things. And that's all. It's the simplest little tool. We kind of built it into a calibration meeting format, which is more than a retrospective. And of course, it again involves the people who are or who should be involved into the conversations. And that's, I think, also an interesting thing. Whom do we work with? Whether we are internally or externally facilitating organization design processes. And yeah, that's not the tools, but I would like to challenge ourselves on that a little bit as well. And that's my plan, that on the Pre-Conference Masterclass, we'll actually have a look around and reflect on that a bit and see different variations.
Sounds great. I'm really looking forward to it. And while you were speaking now, Elvira, I had that question when you showed me the second tool, that is that right, that is then defining the pace of how we are going to evolve in that change process, meaning that usually one of the biggest challenges is that change making is a top-down process, and how to combine it with participation with people, that it's for everybody and people feel it. So what can consultants do with that?
Yeah, and this is where I was already tapping slightly in, that who should be involved in these conversations. And I think that's also something what us, especially external organization design consultants, should challenge our belief system on that also. Because of course, we usually like to partner with the CEOs and CXOs and on a top level. But it's not always that level that we have to work with. And on the other hand, when we are talking about the role of the internal work evolutionists, they also not going to have always access to the management team or to the board. And I remember how often on my courses, people ask this question that, yeah, we could move forward, but somehow we can't get the management buy-in. And why do you need that for? And people really start kind of thinking, oh, because that's what every book says. But if the management has given you a clear strategy, a clear goal set, then why do you need the management to approve if you want to change something, if that change will support the organization to go to that direction and achieve those goals? So it's often us, the consultants, who are also, again, sorry to say, but slowing down the process by trying to get the management on board, and they might have done their job, yeah? And often you don't need this kind of whole hierarchical approval to change something. And to change something, I think it's also important to talk a little bit about what are we talking about, yeah? What we are talking about is actually the work is changing. So when goals are changing, when things are changing in our environment, our customer needs are changing, then what we have to do is changing. That's how we can respond to it. So we often have to have conversations about what is the work that we have to do now, because it's not the same thing as you did yesterday or 15 years ago. And this is one of the I think the trickiest thing currently that especially large organizations are struggling with, that people are so used to holding on to their job description and saying that this is what you hired me for, this is what you're paying me for, that this also slows down our natural reflex to adapt to what do we have to do now and how are we going to do that, which are the basic questions of organization design in my understanding.
Okay, as I hear, we have some challenges that we can work on it internally and also from consultant perspective. And can you just give me a little sneak peek what will happen in September 18 at our pre-conference masterclass in the last 5 minutes before we finish our super conversation?
Yes, my main goal is, I mean, first of all, I'm not doing it alone, so I have two really good students of mine who are going to join me, Andrea, Jurecska, and Zsófia, Kishonti, who've completed the course years ago, and they are using this methodology, the solution-focused organization development and design approach in their work. So they're also going to bring in their experiences. And I think we're going to focus on two things mainly. One is, what do we do when we don't do a diagnosis? Because that takes a lot of time. And how could we use that energy and invest it already into creating the preferred future? And we have some nice cases and some canvases that we are going to bring. And the other thing we're going to dig deep into is designing the design process. Because that's the other crucial part of it. Whom do we involve into designing the process? At each phase, are we going top down or bottom up or just dealing with one part of the organization? Who should be involved? With whom should we make these agreements? And we have a whole kind of scale, you know it because you also done the course. We have the whole scale, and we're going to go through different mindsets, ruling mindsets in the organizations and ruling mindsets of us, consultants, internal or external. And how do we match these mindsets in our processes? And my best hope is that I can challenge each and every one of you who will join, that at least make a step out of your comfort zone and try something that's kind of next door to it, which comes with more involvement and more responsibility given to the people in the organization, and rather than us taking it away as external consultants. So that's the plan, and hopefully we're going to have lots of nice and interesting cases from us also, and of course from the participants as well. So we're bringing our canvases and we're going to experiment with them on your cases also that you are currently working on or recently worked with.
Wow, Elvira, that sounds really exciting and pretty ambitious for a one-day masterclass. So
I know.
it's great that you are there, the three of us facilitating and walking us through that day during that process. And thank you for now for our conversation. I really enjoyed, and I hope many of you from Hungary and internationally are going to join us for the pre-conference masterclass in Budapest with Elvira Kalmár, Andrea, Jurecska, and Zsófia Kishonti. That will be a great day to make us grounded before the conference, I believe.
Thank you very much, Zsófia, for the opportunity now, and looking forward to meeting many of you at the pre-conference or the conference afterwards.
Thank you, Elvira. See you soon in Budapest.
See you.
Bye.